Welcome to Friends with Fertility, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of fertility, reproductive health, and all the emotional journeys that are in between. I'm your host, Elizabeth King, a fertility expert dedicated to providing you with the knowledge, support, and inspiration you need on your path to parenthood. Whether you're just starting out, exploring your options, or looking for solidarity and advice, we are here for you. Let's embark on this journey together and turn uncertainty into empowerment and make friends with fertility. Let's get started. Welcome back to Friends with Fertility. Today, our friend is Bethany Gettis. She is a former weight loss and health nurse turned certified holistic nutritional consultant and the founder of Nutritious and Delicious. She brings over 17 years of experience in this area of nutrition. She specializes in helping women with hormonal imbalances, fertility issues, PCOS, and endometriosis, and offers customized meal plans and nutrition education to individuals and families worldwide. I hope you enjoy this conversation that Bethany and I had. It was really informational, generally speaking, not only for fertility, but just what we need to look out for in the world we live in right now and how that can help us on our path to being healthy. Hope you enjoy. Welcome back, everybody. Now we actually have Bethany here with us. So welcome, Bethany.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yes. So Bethany and I spoke maybe a couple of months ago or a month ago or so about what she does with her business. And I thought it would be a good fit to bring her on to speak to all of you on a broader level of how our nutrition affects fertility and vice versa. And let's just start with the basics. What do we need to know if we're trying to conceive, or even if we're not trying to conceive for that matter, from a hormonal perspective of how our nutrition affects our body?
Yeah, that's a good point. Nutrition affects the body in a huge way. They always say the 80-20 rule. So obviously if you're working out, it's like 20% eating, 80%. The reason being, we do so much of it. We eat all of the time. So a lot of the times what I see when clients typically come to me is they usually are having a lot of hormonal issues, whether that be, with their own periods, maybe trying to get pregnant, trying to stay pregnant, maybe having unsuccessful pregnancies second time around, so unexplained fertility. We can definitely dive deep into kind of each of those depending on which ones would resonate more with your audience. But for myself, I look at it more of a holistic perspective because I have been a nurse and I've worked in the diet and health industry. So I've seen kind of the medical aspect, but putting it kind of together with the holistic, I think is really helpful for people long term to keep those goals.
I get asked a lot about how and why fertility is where it is now compared to where it was, 25 or even 50 years ago. And people often ask, is it about the food that we're eating? And I would love to hear your answer on that.
It's a combination of things. From what I've seen, is a lot of women are waiting later, first of all, to have children, and they want to put their careers first. That's kind of a big one for a lot of women. Feeling financially stable or stable in relationships, that's a big one. The other thing that I've seen in terms of like the holistic nutrition aspect and sort of the industry as a whole, the food industry has kind of gone down the pipes a little bit. So because obviously we have mass consumption of food, a lot of our food is overly processed, even if it's kind of claimed as organic, like healthy, it's something that's nutritious on the shelf. A lot of it's marketing as well. So for example, the dairy industry and the wheat industry has completely changed 20 something years ago. I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, well, I grew up in the UK, we used to have milk brought to our house by the milkman in like a glass bottle, and it was like raw milk. And you couldn't get that at the store, and it had to come fresh from a farm. So things have been different, and the cows have been given a lot more hormones. The wheat industry, it's very much mass produced. So this is where I'm seeing a lot more intolerances to food, especially in those categories of wheat and dairy, especially. Our bodies are kind of breaking down. And unfortunately, once we start to hit inflammation, this is kind of what goes into the cycle of now we start having more symptoms if you have hormonal struggles already. And a lot of it does come down to sort of the food that we eat. And a lot of people don't see that, but Whatever you're eating, it's affecting everything from your gut to your brain to your hormone health to your thyroid. So there's many aspects it can go into.
So let's touch on really quick. You mentioned even if it says it's organic, doesn't necessarily mean that it is. How do we know what's what? How do we know what to trust?
Yeah. A lot of the times, what happens is when you go grocery shopping, a lot of the products are actually on like the shelves, kind of as tall as we are. So whatever we're looking at, they're paying more to be in those areas, right? And especially with children, they're on lower ground because kids want to pick up stuff and they're going to pass it to the parent, right? So it's just kind of those types of things. The other thing that I find is color on bags. So if it's green, it may look like it is a healthy bag of something. But the big one I find for people is really read the ingredients. So a lot of people kind of get stuck on this notion of reading nutrient labels in terms of like calories, fats, like is it keto friendly, like anything that's sort of trending right now, they'll sort of gravitate towards the wording for it or looking at sort of the nutritional value. But really, looking at the ingredient label, if you have ingredients like a paragraph long and you can actually pronounce the ingredients, it is full of chemicals. And that can even be like food that is in the organic aisle that is kind of claimed as healthy. So you kind of have to sort of just pick and choose throughout and learning the education behind sort of what is natural, what isn't. Going back to the basics of your fruits and your vegetables, obviously proteins, kind of finding out where they're coming from. Healthy fats are really good for you and really good for hormone health. And we've kind of been taught as a society to get away from carbs, to get away from fats. And there's a lot of like general misconceptions around food, I've noticed.
Give us some of those top misconceptions that you run into often.
Um, Dieting, that's a huge one. Obviously, working in the diet industry. So, reducing your calories is going to make you lose weight. Yes, it is. It's going to definitely help you lose weight. And being that it is the beginning of the year, most people are going into, very restrictive diets or things that are kind of missing food groups. Um, the problem with that is it isn't long-term sustainability. And a lot of the times when I work with clients, I actually put the foods in that they really enjoy, but we're making it healthier. So if they crave pizzas or wings or chocolate, like we're actually making something instead of, but they feel like they're still having something because if you start to feel deprived, you're actually going to backfire. And this is where the weight loss comes off and then they regain it all back plus more. And that's one of the big conceptions I see. Another one is the, like, again, with the whole food industry, like, well, I thought it was healthy. And why would they put it on the shelves if it has, these potential hazardous dyes in it that's not good for my health? And people are quite shocked when I tell them what the ingredients really are and what they do to the body. And people are more likely to rethink about the products that they're buying. Again, a lot of it is catered to sort of like appeal of like what it looks like, the bag color, is it kid friendly, like do kids look at it going, oh, there's a cartoon character on it? So just things like that. There's ploys to sort of get people to buy more things, and it's addictive. A lot of the foods that are made, man-made, are pretty much done in a lab, so they have found that bliss point where basically it's addictive. And that's where, like, a lot of the chip companies, like, bet you can't just eat one because they know they've done studies on it. People will go back and eat more. They've
Right.
tested it on animals and stuff too. So, um,
And it's
that,
actually quite scary when you start looking at the ingredients and seeing those things and realizing
yeah,
there is nothing related to food here at all. Like there's
yeah,
hard, like it's mainly all lab created. And
yeah,
I think in the US, they're going to start changing some things, I hope, a little bit
yeah.
around that. I know you're in Canada, I think, and it's a little bit different than it is here. And of course, very different in Europe. And that's where I think I hear a lot of times people say, well, I went overseas for vacation this summer and my gut felt great. I felt
Hmm.
more energized and everything. And I think a big part of that is because of the food that is just
Yes.
available, that is cleaner than we have here in the United States. And to that point, how long does it take for our body to catch up to actually get to that point where we've gotten all the junk food out, so to speak, and the whole foods are really starting to take over and expressing themselves now in our body, specifically to reproductive health. Like, what is that time frame? Is there a time frame?
It really depends individually on the person. I see people that have a ton of inflammation, and if you have more chronic issues going on, it's like we have to sort of undo and go backwards a little bit and kind of try and find out like what it is, because a lot of people get to the point where that now they have a diagnosis. They maybe have type 2 diabetes or heart disease, um, possibly, weight around the middle, things like that. So you're kind of seeing people at the end stages or really chronic stages, and depending on the person and also their ability to listen and take the health advice, it can go pretty fast, because we can actually put more nutrients into the body, like antioxidants, the right nutrients that they're possibly missing, and it will help their body start to jumpstart. Usually, people start to see, in terms of inflammation, like weight loss quite quickly because their gut is trying to get rid of that, and it's quite stagnant typically, and it's been there for years. If somebody that's kind of like on a health kick and they're usually quite healthy, it can take a couple of months. Like I'd say like a 2 to 3 months for, I'd say, the average person that maybe is trying to lose like 10 to 20 pounds and they have a lot of inflammation in their gut. Their skin is kind of having reactions to certain things. But if I'm seeing someone that's chronic, and this is like where they're severely rashing, like they've got all these like chronic viruses that are happening, they're usually on antibiotics or something just to help them. It can take upwards to a year, unfortunately. But
And how
um,
are you measuring that to determine, okay, it's been a year, now we know that you're good, or 3 months or whatever? Like, what's the measurement to determine that?
you want to ask them how they're feeling, obviously. So every
Okay.
time that we do accountability calls, we're checking in, because obviously, like when you start anything, like whether it's meal plans, supplements are really helpful as well. I find that they kind of progress quicker, like with the meal plan on its own. But these supplements, they can take a good 2 to 3 months to start to accumulate in your system to see any kind of results. And that's like in a natural sort of, I would say, normal person that's coming to me saying like, hey, these things have kind of been irritating me. I need to kind of get this moving. But what you want to be kind of gauging on is how the person's feeling within the first 2 weeks. Eating cleaner than you normally are or drinking less, even if it's not like a drastic change, which I'm not looking for, you want to start to hear that they're like, I'm like really feeling good today. Like I had a lot more energy today. Like they'll still have their ebbs and flows, but you want to start to see more good days than negative days. Same with like gauging with women in terms of like period health, like endometriosis, cramping, things like that. Like over a couple of months and cycles of them having their period, you want to be able to see that it's actually happening less and less. And they're like, I've been following for a few months now, and I'm not cramping as much as I used to. I'm not bleeding as much as I used to. And they're just feeling overall better. So that's kind of what we're gauging, is how they're doing.
Okay. And what are some of the supplements that you recommend kind of across the board, just as a
Um,
general rule of thumb?
kind of kind of in general, vitamin C packets are really good. They usually hold about 1,000 milligrams, I believe it is, of vitamin C, and you can drink it. It usually doesn't have any other stuff in there. A lot of the vitamin C tablets I see have sucralose, which is really bad for our health. It's linked with a lot of studies on cancer and things like that, and like eye problems, like can't see, like it actually detaches the retina from the back of the eye, which I learned that through a naturopath because I was using it myself and I had no clue it was in a protein powder. So vitamin C is one, like generally most people can use. B complex, so a B100 that has all your B vitamins in it, is really good as well for cellular energy. So this is somebody that, again, doesn't have a lot of energy. They need some more nutrients into their food. They're not getting enough. Our stress, drinking lots of coffee, exercising too much depletes all of that. Magnesium is another one as well that I see that is massively depleted, again, due to chronic stress with lifestyle, just eating, generic food in general, that there's not enough fruits and vegetables. This is where I'm seeing more craving sweets and chocolates and things like that. I'm trying to get that like sugar rush. So
And
magnesium.
magnesium helps with the sugar. not
Yeah,
wanting,
most
not
people
craving sugar, I guess.
Yeah, most people typically when they're craving like the chocolate type of foods, they're usually lacking the magnesium, and they have very disrupted sleep as well, and headaches, leg cramps, things like that. So I'm listening for those signs in general. Vitamin D depends on the person, because that can also trigger a little bit more, like with PCOS, things like that, if they're having like skin issues already. So I'm kind of varying on that one. But generally, vitamin D is a good one, especially if you're in Canada, because we don't get a lot of sunshine, unfortunately. So we do actually need more vitamin D in general. Um, just in general, I would say those and omega 3. So, in terms of like a flax oil, that would be really good. Like, say, if someone is stagnated in the bowels, like I would recommend that like a teaspoon to max, probably a tablespoon a day. And also gives them healthy hair, nails, and skin as well. So, that's kind of a general one.
Great. So, if somebody's coming to see you who's looking to get pregnant, maybe they're trying to get pregnant naturally, or they've already been down the road and now they're going to ART, what would be a general, again, I say general because it does need to be specific to each person, but generally speaking, if we know there's no major underlying issues, what would be an overall eating plan that you would recommend to somebody?
Somebody that's coming in, this is where I would do an assessment. First of all, I want to be listening to sort of their mindset, their emotions around food and drink in general, because this is where sometimes that can play a factor. And it is quite common, unfortunately, is that it's either restricting, not enough food, not enough protein, especially women, I find. So then they're anemic, their calories are lacking, their bodies aren't actually giving enough calories, for them to be able to have a healthy period or to be able to get pregnant, even though maybe they're just kind of sustaining themselves throughout the day, but they're not sort of nourishing like, for life to grow. So that's kind of something I want to look out for, especially eating disorders. If I hear certain language, whether it's one end or the other, sometimes it could be binge eating, anorexia, type of things that have happened in the past, or like obsessive eating, very high emotional eating as well. So there's two ends of the spectrum there. Um, and that's where we need to sort of make sure that when we are putting a plan together, it's not restrictive. And that's something that I'm very, very much about, because having worked in that industry, when you conform to something, it's more likely that it's not going to work. So we want to conform something that is more so to your lifestyle, and we're kind of doing baby steps to get you involved in it. Something that you will enjoy cooking, that's easy enough, depending if you have kids and all that kind of stuff as well. We need to factor that in too. Somebody with fertility, the big ones I notice that are lacking typically is lack of protein. So we need to talk about how that is essential for the building blocks in our body, and also creating, a baby. The other big one is healthy fats and helping the hormones stabilize, because a lot of the times the hormones may be off depending on endometriosis, PCOS, depends on where they're at. So, kind of looking at those factors, a lot of people aren't eating enough vegetables, to be honest, and a variety of them. A lot of people eat the same, like 5 vegetables. And we need different nutrients, different colors, of our veggies as well. Depending on where you live, that could be a bit of an issue. Just, I know where we are, we don't have tropical fruits and stuff here. So when we get them, they're kind of not that great, and they don't taste very ripe. So again, they've been ripening in a truck or a ship in the dark, and we don't get enough nutrients. So this is where I would probably recommend to, a woman, going for more like frozen fruit, something that has been preserved, because then it tastes better, it has more nutrients, and also it's a bit cheaper as well, because everything obviously has gone up in cost like massively as well. So that's a big one.
Right. So speaking of PCOS and endometriosis, what on those kind of lines are those pretty general too? So most people with PCOS should focus on this sort of eating, and the people that have endometriosis should focus on the other.
So I myself have PCOS. So PCOS, we need to look more at, it's typically like a good 70% is typically to do with blood sugars. You could still be at a healthy weight, but your blood sugars aren't balancing properly, and the body system is off in terms of your brain telling your ovaries and the feedback loop. So what's usually happening is that your body is dumping out more insulin because your blood sugars are too high. So this is where we usually get women on supplements right away. So that can take 2 to 3 months to kind of get going. But with the PCOS, I usually am looking more at pairing foods together properly. So like protein or a healthy fat with like the carbohydrates or like the fruit that they're eating. Because even if they're eating a piece of fruit alone, that piece of fruit will actually spike their insulin up. So they'd be like, I'm eating really healthy. I'm eating all this fruit and, products that have sugar in it that we don't even know about, like bread, could be spiking their insulin levels as well. So what we need to do is start adding like healthy fats in there, putting olive oil maybe on that, toast that they're eating, or avocado. Maybe the carbohydrates they're eating are too high on the glycemic index, meaning it pushes your blood sugars too high. So then we need to pair it with protein. So just like little tweaks like that, and you start to feel better, and it lessens the inflammation, it lowers your blood sugar, and your hormones start to rebalance. So that's kind of the PCOS style of eating. In terms of endometriosis, a little bit different. It's not so much a blood sugar, it's more of a chronic inflammation problem. So they're having really heavy periods, they're in pain a lot. It's debilitating. And a lot of the times we need to sort of look at like the environment, the food, how we're cooking the food. A lot of the times we usually take out red meat, things like that, like inflammatory foods, usually as much as we can, kind of going grass fed, maybe fish they need more of, maybe they need more like lean meats like chicken, turkey, or even plant based proteins. I'm not one size fits all, like, oh, you should do plant based or you should do keto. Like, everyone is different, and some people can follow something like that, and some people cannot. So, it just depends on the person and maybe the symptoms that they're experiencing. Because I'm not going to give one plan to somebody for PCOS that maybe they have endometriosis, because it's not going to work for them.
What are some good options for plant-based protein?
Plant-based proteins, a lot of people kind of get this one a little bit wrong, unfortunately, especially like vegetarians. And this is where they're missing a lot of the B12 and iron, is you're supposed to pair proteins together, the plant-based ones together. So that would look like maybe hummus and corn chips mixed together. You could also do like lentils, beans, add corn in there as well. So you want to pair it up with each other. Hummus is a big one as well that a lot of people like because they easily can just spread it on something. Tofu's good. I'm not huge into soy. Usually soy is maybe one that I recommend if someone is in the menopause, because it does act like estrogen in the body. So we kind of want to be kind of cautious who we're giving that one to, especially not boys or men. Um, it's in a lot of our food though, unfortunately. Even like meatballs and things like that. So people have to be aware of that. Um, so yeah, with the plant proteins, you can use tempeh too as well. Quinoa is pretty good in terms of like a carbohydrate that's higher in protein, and it's
Mm,
also gluten free as well.
okay, I
Chick
didn't realize it was a protein.
Yeah, they're not very high in protein though. So like when you say protein, because a lot of people have misguided, like they're like, oh, I eat protein, I eat like almonds. That's actually a healthy fat. So it's just sometimes it's just like education of, okay, this is actually in that category, but like great that you're eating almonds, but maybe we're eating too much of the healthy fats and the calories are way too high on it. So it's more portions and just kind of understanding like what fits into what category, and the education behind it.
And what I kind of hear you saying, a lot of this conversation we are having is listen to your body, because that's where you're going to see the signs of if this is
Yeah.
working for you or not working for you, or how you're feeling. And I think that plays into a lot in our lives, as far as you are the expert in yourself, and just tuning into, if I've been eating this for the last couple days, how has my body felt? How am I sleeping? What's my energy, etc.? What are
Mhm.
my bowels like? And recognizing that everything comes together in a really beautiful way when you can find that sweet spot for you. And because there's so much noise in this industry, like you said, there's keto and there's this and that and
Yeah.
whatever, you recognize at least for me, I'll speak for myself. When I've gone down those roads, I'm like, "Ooh, my body doesn't do well with this high fat. I
Yeah.
gain weight, my stomach feels funky." But then somebody else can eat that and they lose weight, they feel amazing, So it's really figuring out for you specifically where your sweet spot is. But it's so important now because our food is not to benefit us unless we are making it the effort that we need to do to take control of that, to understand what it is. Like Bethany, sorry, said, if we can't pronounce the ingredients, it's not real. It's
Yeah.
not something. I mean, I've heard so many times if you don't have a jar of that in your own home, don't have it in something that is made in a box,
Yeah.
right? And that's kind of a good rule of thumb. And when you have something as simple as that statement, it's easier to go through the grocery store and be like, "Ooh, that I don't even know what that is." So clearly that's not in a box at my house. So I'm going to put that back at the store.
Yeah.
And I think you'll recognize as you go on that your body feels better once you can find what it is for that. And working with somebody like Bethany to kind of tune that in and navigate what that looks like, I think you'll get there faster than just finding it out on your own. So how do you work with people? How can they find you?
Definitely, I usually recommend people to go to my website, www.ndelish.com. It depends on how people want to work with me. If they are sort of looking at foods and going, I feel like I'm reacting to everything, we can definitely do some testing and look for food intolerances, heavy metals in the system, and nutrient deficiencies, which is a really good indicator for me to help you sort of understand what your body's lacking. This is where it goes straight into a consultation. I think the consultation is key to understanding like what's really going on. I can work with women, men, children, families as well, all the way from fertility, hormone health, family health, and menopause.
Amazing. I really do feel like this whole side of nutrition is going to become more and more of a normalized conversation rather than just I'm on a diet, I need to lose weight, so I want to see a nutritionist. I
Yeah,
think at least in our country, it's becoming more of a red flag for people to be aware of this is what's happening and we need to step up and take control of that and demand that we have better quality food for us because
yeah,
it's making us really really sick. And if we look at that big picture of the pharmaceutical companies and our food and all of that, it's just a whole loop of things that are not good. So take control yourself. Figure out if it's not Bethany, somebody like her to work with to see where your sweet spot is, not only for your fertility, but just your health in general. And I think that you will see lots of differences pretty quickly.
definitely. I agree.
Well, thank you for being here and sharing your wisdom with all of us. And again, we will post all of the show notes in the podcast as well as the website for you to find her. Thanks so much. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Friends with Fertility. We hope that you found the stories, insights, and tips as inspiring and informative as we did. Remember, you are not alone on this journey. Your friends with fertility are here for you. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to follow us on social media for updates and more fertility resources. Until next time, stay hopeful and keep believing in your journey, and know that we are sending you lots of love.